Surprise! Hey everybody, thank you for choosing to hang out with me once again. This video is our special 10,000 subscriber video, and I thought what better way to celebrate than to give you a story from one of the viewers. This week's case comes from Russia, so disclaimer, right now I will probably mispronounce names and places, but doggone it, I will try my best not to. We're discussing the Skopinsky Maniac, Viktor Makhov, who rightfully earned his moniker. He abducted 2 young girls and held them in a bunker for almost 4 years. It's very reminiscent of the JC Dugard story, if you guys remember that earlier video. If you don't, I'll link it either as a pop-up in the corner or in the description below. So let's talk about this creep. Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Viktor Vasilyevich Makhov was born on June 22, 1950 in Skopin, Russia. His father had left before he was born, so he was raised by his mother Elisa Valentino. Viktor was very intelligent, so much so he finished school earlier than his classmates. He joined the military shortly after graduating. During this time, he attended a technical school to earn a certification to be a mining foreman when he was relieved of his military duties. He completed this, but unfortunately, the mines in Skopin had closed, so he had nowhere to work. He had no plans of leaving his hometown, though, so he gained employment at the local automobile assembly plant. Viktor was a great worker. His foreman gave him praises often and used him as an example for pushing others to go the extra mile. He was the picture-perfect example of a Soviet citizen, even receiving multiple certificates and being openly accepted into the Communist Party. By the end of 1970, Markov had gotten married and life was going pretty good. This high point, however, would crash when his marriage was over within 3 months. After the relationship, he moved in with his mother and just describes that from this point on, his personal life was in shambles. In the late 90s, news reports were all over about a man who had been arrested for kidnapping women and keeping them as slaves. The thought of having complete control over someone excited Viktor, so he began a sick plan. Viktor decided to build an underground bunker so he could imprison his own slaves. The bunker was created beneath a garage on his mother's property, and it was about 7 meters underground or 22 feet. The entrance was well hidden. You couldn't access it from the garage. Instead, it was entered on the side of the garage. The passage was blocked by a metal panel that was held to the side by magnets. The panel itself had to be pried off, and it couldn't just be removed with your hands. Below here, there was a set of stairs that led down a narrow passageway to a landing, and a concrete wall that contained 2 hatches. One of these hatches led to his own personal chamber of horrors. The hatches were made of heavy iron and kept locked with a padlock. The garage itself was surrounded by overgrowth, so this made it look even more inconspicuous and unused. Inside the chamber, Viktor prepped it for the arrival of his unfortunate victim. He equipped it with bunk beds and essential items for cooking and everyday necessities. Once he was finished, he began to hunt. Viktor's first known victim was a 16-year-old girl in December of 1999. He offered to supply alcohol to her and her boyfriend, so they agreed and went to his home. However, it wasn't long before Viktor attempted to make advances on the girl. She was not interested and decided to leave the home. Side note, I couldn't figure out exactly where or what happened to the boyfriend, but it appears he wasn't around for the next events. Viktor did not take no for an answer, so instead he followed her outside where she was attacked and dragged her into his bunker. The girl was held captive for upwards to 2 weeks, where he sexually assaulted her until she thankfully managed to escape. Viktor neglected to lock up his bunker, and so therefore he lost his first prisoner. Luckily for him, she never went and reported the crime. No one had any clue, and sadly, this left him open to do this to someone else. And of course he did. It would be more than half a year before Viktor tried again. On the evening of September 30th, 2000, Viktor spotted 14-year-old Ekaterina Martynova, aka Katya, and 17-year-old Elena Samokhina, aka Lena. The girls were leaving a disco in a small town outside of Moscow. He had his friend and accomplice, 25-year-old Elena Badukina, in the car as well. Viktor pulled up beside the girls and offered to give them a ride home, which apparently this practice wasn't uncommon, so the girls accepted without much thought. Once in the car, they were offered alcohol, which, unknown to them, contained sedatives. Before they knew it, they were out. Viktor and Elena drove the girls back to his home. Once there, he and Elena dragged the girls into the bunker, and it wasn't long before they woke up, very scared and confused. They found themselves in a dingy concrete bunker located behind a bolted hatch. The bunker was split in two sections: the living space, which contained all of their furniture, and the second room was plastered with explicit images on the walls. This was where Viktor would take the girls one at a time and assault them multiple times a week. This bunker was now their prison, and unbeknownst to them, it would be that way for the next 3.5 years. During this time, they would be used as his own personal slaves, tortured and beaten. Locked underground in the dark, Viktor subjected them to unimaginable suffering. If the girls resisted his attacks, they would be punished. Punishments included starving them, turning off their electricity, which provided warmth and fresh air through a ventilation system, and even spraying tear gas into their dungeon. While, on the other hand, they were rewarded for compliance. He would provide them small comforts through books, cassettes, paints, and even a small black and white TV. The girls relied on one another a lot in order to survive their horrific experience. They clung to each other in desperation. According to the girls, they had a pair of bunk beds, but always slept together. In the beginning, they would just lay in each other's arms and cry. For the first 6 months, they were apathetic and did nothing, but soon realized in order to remain hopeful, they had to change their ways. To continue carrying on, they developed schedules to keep busy. The girls knew they had to make their existence bearable if they were going to survive. Katya spent a lot of time writing poems and drawing, while Lena studied English. Together, the pair exercised every day. The girls tried to get away from Viktor, even attempting to kill him a month into their capture, but they failed. They attempted to strangle him with the cord of a heater, but he quickly threw them off. They also tried to persuade him to let them go. They promised not to turn him in, but apparently he stated he would only let them go in 20 years after each of them had given him 10 children apiece. Viktor assaulted the girls every single day in the beginning, and unfortunately, this constant activity caused Lena to fall pregnant 3 times. Katya, however, never became pregnant. On November 6, 2001, Lena gave birth to a son who she called Vladik, who, by all accounts, was healthy. Katya had successfully delivered the boy with only a medical manual Viktor had given them. 2 months after his birth, Viktor took the baby away from the girls, stating he knew he would die in the bunker. Viktor abandoned the baby at the entrance of a building where he knew he would be found. The second birth occurred on June 6, 2003. Once again, Katya delivered the baby, and Lena had a second son she named Oleg. Unlike the first baby, Oleg was small and not as healthy. Katya recalled him being blue and not crying until after she started washing him up. This baby was taken from them at 4 months after his birth, and too was abandoned. Both boys were thankfully discovered and taken to an orphanage. Lena at first didn't think of them as her children, but implanted against her will. Once they were born, she couldn't turn away from her motherly instinct. She was heartbroken when they were taken from her. For 1,320 days, they clung to each other in their routine. They prayed every day and never gave up. The girls lived in fear of death but held hope regardless. Both had a plan in case they died. Each had notes prepped with their information and what happened to them. They even went as far as putting notes in Oleg's clothes when he was taken away, hoping they would be discovered, but sadly nothing came of this. Eventually, Viktor began to ease up on restrictions. By 2003, the girls were given permissions to go to the upper chamber of the bunker for fresh air. It was during this time he also began to take them out for walks, one at a time. Katya gained more permissions. He allowed her to come into the house to bathe as opposed to using the buckets in the bunker. This new shortened leash, though, came with ulterior motives. Viktor had grown bored and was mostly unsatisfied with his two slaves and wanted a new addition. He had his sights set on a young medical student who was lodging in his home. He ordered Katya to pretend to be his niece in an attempt to convince the girl to stay longer so he could put forth his plan. However, Katya and Lena had a plan of their own. Katya secretly hid a note within a cassette tape, which she gave to the student to warn her of the danger she was in. The note contained their names, home addresses, and location of the bunker. It read, quote, "Victor's not my uncle. He keeps us in a basement from September 2000 onwards. He can kill us and you. Take this note to the police." End quote. Without hesitation, she fled the home and turned the note over to authorities. The discovery of the girls shocked the country. Huddled together on a bed were the two terrified girls who many presumed were dead. On April 26, 2003, they were finally safe. Lena was heavily pregnant, exactly 8 months along when she was rescued. Both girls were frail and weak, but Lena couldn't walk more than a few yards unaided. Lena begged police to help her find her two children, but unfortunately they had been adopted at that point. Later, she would realize this would be for the best, since they could never have a normal mother-child relationship, and these families could do much better than she. Both girls were reunited with their mothers, who never gave up hope of seeing them alive again. Lena, who was 21 at the time of rescue, gave birth shortly after, and sadly the child was stillborn. Their recounts of life in captivity was as horrific as it was inspiring. The pair had an indefatigable spirit. Viktor told police his reasoning for taking the girls was to fulfill his dream of having a large family. He wanted to accomplish his personal mission of improving the demographic situation in Russia. For his crimes, he received 17 years imprisonment in a penal colony. Viktor's mother, Elisa, denied knowing anything about his bunker or the girls, and no charges were filed against her. His accomplice, Elena, received 5.5 years for helping him kidnap the girls. On March 3, 2001, Viktor was released after serving his sentence at the age of 70. His release horrified his victims. Both girls have families now. Lena stated, quote, "What happened to me left a deep wound in my soul that will never heal." End quote. This one was a very sad story, and I can't get over his BS reasoning for doing what he did. He's just another one of those sick individuals who just feel the need to control another person, and it's honestly just gross. I don't really know what else more to say about this one, guys. Also, big shout out to Rejected Driftwood, who suggested this case for me to share with you guys. We appreciate your contribution. And some of you may have noticed, but I have a new end screen. Thank you so much to Kim, who took this picture and thought of me and sent it to me. I love it so much. It's creepy, it's spooky, it just fits in the channel. So thank you. But I am interested to hear your opinions, so leave your thoughts in the comments below and we can chat. Also, if you enjoyed the content, please give it a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more. And if you're not subscribed yet, please consider doing so, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. thank you guys for getting me to 10K. I hope you enjoyed this extra video this week. I just wanted to show you how much I appreciate each and every one of you. You're all the best, and I'll see you at the end of the week once again. This community is definitely a great one, and I hope we continue up from here. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, friends.